Hey everyone, welcome back to All Things Private Practice. I am joined today by Dr. Priyanka Rao, who is a licensed clinical psychologist based in Minneapolis and the founder of ASHA Mental Health, a private practice specializing in neurodiversity affirming care and multiculturally inclusive mental health care. I cannot speak today, and it's the first thing I'm doing. She is also an executive coach for leaders and entrepreneurs, especially for those with ADHD, a late diagnosed ADHD herself, and is also launching a coaching program specifically for late in life diagnosis for ADHDers. And we're going to talk a little bit about your journey today as a ADHD entrepreneur. So thanks for coming on here. And one thing I noticed immediately was like you pitched me on like 5 different topics, which is very ADHD of you.
Yes, very on brand. My brain is always doing 19 different things. So
Yeah, that's fair. I get that a lot. So, okay. Where do you want to start? Because you were diagnosed when?
I was diagnosed, no, my kid's older now, 3.5 years ago.
Okay.
So after my first kid was born. So I had made it through grad school, a couple leadership positions, a lot of life. And then my kid was born and I felt like my brain was imploding. And like the mental load of motherhood and keeping track of all the things just got to be too much. And so finally my therapist and I were talking and she was like, you definitely have ADHD. Would you like to do something about that now? And I was like, oh yeah, that would be great.
Finally ready. Like my brain has imploded and all the tasks are building up and I feel really overwhelmed.
Yes, exactly.
And I imagine, prior to that diagnosis, you still felt really overwhelmed and you just masked and pushed through and probably burnt yourself out to no end.
Yes, all the time. So I was like master of procrastinate to the last second, like buckle down, get everything done, pull it off at the last second, and then like crash, repeat.
Yeah.
And I just like assumed, I was being lazy or disorganized or something versus like, oh, my brain actually operates a little bit differently. And that might be why this is so effing hard.
Yeah, for sure. So I can totally relate to that. And I think, I used to also beat the hell out of myself for like, why do I always leave things to the last minute? Eventually something is going to fall through the cracks and it won't get done. But I kept proving to myself like that was absolutely not the case. Like I was going to let it build. I was going to let it build. I was going to let it build. And then all of a sudden that pressure becomes so intense that I'm like, it's time to start the thing. Yeah, it's due tomorrow, or I have to have it ready in an hour. And then it would be good. And it just reinforces like, I can do this and I can get away with this. And once I learned about my ADHD diagnosis, I almost was able to just affirm the fact that this is how my brain works. Like I'm never going to be the person who knocks the project out in the first week. Just not going to be me. And I've had to really honor that for myself and not shame myself for like not adhering to that type of expectation.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think the why can't I just narrative would be in my head all the time and the beating myself up. And then when I first got diagnosed with ADHD, I did the whole like, don't make excuses, like don't write it off. It's not really a thing. Like I had that whole like identity development phase. And then I kind of just owned it and I got to drop all the drama around like holding myself to a standard that I know I can't meet and then beating myself up for not meeting it. So now I just like plan to procrastinate and I plan for things to run late and I plan to be late for stuff. Well, no, I don't. I just know that I will be and I don't yell at myself for it. You get to drop a lot of that, like, I don't know, like self-flagellation and the drama when you have like a good reason or understanding of why certain things are hard for you.
Absolutely. 100%. And I mean, it's still, it doesn't make things like less hard or difficult in certain ways or aspects, but it certainly allows for a different lens to just be like, I see this much more clearly now. And I think allowing to have that self-compassion, that ability to just like accept who we are, accept our limitations, accept the accommodations that we need to build into our lives, super important. And also like unpacking our own internalized ableism around it, because I know for me as a high achiever who has done a lot in my life, it can feel like, no, you should be able to push through this burnout. You should be able to push through this exhaustion or this executive dysfunction or whatever. And the reality is like, no, if you continue to push, like the likelihood of ending up in a year or two of autistic burnout, laying in my living room in the darkness, not talking to anybody is pretty freaking likely. And it has happened multiple times.
Yeah, I definitely have done the like power through thing. And then for me, like I get sick. So right
Yeah.
now I'm stuffy because I have two kids in daycare. And so I'm just
Well,
always
you
sick.
also posted
But
that it's negative 15 degrees out where you live. So
I did. Yeah. Do not recommend. But yeah, I think like it was like clockwork for me. I would power through the semester and then I'd hit a semester break and I'd get uber sick and crash. And I still had not put it together at that point in time, especially in grad school. So like I would go visit my family because I was in grad school in Chicago and my family's in Virginia. And I would go visit them, and every time I was sick the whole time.
yep.
And it was just my body saying enough, like you can't do this anymore.
It's amazing how you like push and push and push, right? Because you're like, okay, I see the finish line. I'm going to push myself to get there. And then I'm going to have a reprieve. Like I'm going to have a break. I'm going to be able to focus. I'm going to be able to like enjoy. And then immediately your immune system is like, nope, not this time.
Yes.
And you get sick. And that's for me every time as well. So with all of the traveling I do for retreats and speaking and it's et cetera, you would think I would learn that by now, where it's like airports, airplanes, stimulation, immune system compromised majorly, gonna get sick every time you travel. I've almost had to mentally build in a couple of sick days for each trip that I go on to know like my immune system's gonna crash and it's inevitable because it's already compromised as is. So it can be such a struggle for a lot of us who are like in these neurodivergent bodies with these compromised immune systems who want to be a part of society and life, but really having to tailor it in a way that honors your needs and really doesn't shame them for asking for your accommodations to be met or building them into your life.
Yeah, definitely. And for me too, I'm my own worst enemy because I get really excited about whatever shiny object is in front of me. And so then the other night I was up until, I don't know, like 1 a.m. playing around with new fonts because I decided that I needed a rebrand.
Sure.
And I needed colors. And so I just went down that rabbit hole for hours and I'm doing it to myself, but it's so easy to, especially when you're ambitious, especially when you have a lot of ideas, which is like, I think why ADHD, so many entrepreneurs are ADHDers because like our brains just like produce a lot of cool ideas. It's hard not to get like swept away in that too. And like forget that like, oh yeah, also you need to eat and also sleep's important. And also you have children that will be up at 6 a.m. So you like really need to go to bed.
Yep. But then there's that part of your brain that's like, but this is also really exhilarating and I need to pursue this. So, I mean, having an interest-based nervous system is a part of this too, right? And like getting really excited, pursuing that passion and sometimes letting it go. And I'd love for you to talk about that because I know a lot of people who are listening who are ADHDers especially probably have been in that place. I've been in it where you get really excited about an idea or a project and you commit to it and you do dive in pretty much head first a lot of the time, only to lose interest, only to forget about some of the tasks, only to let some other things pile up and take priority. And I know for so many people, it creates a lot of shamefulness of like beating the absolute hell out of yourself or like, I never get things done or I never finish what I start or whatever. And I've certainly like coached people on how to navigate that now, you know, fast forwarding, but can you talk about that for yourself and just what you recommend?
Yeah, I mean, I think that has been a work in progress just for me that I've finally kind of found my stride with in the last couple of years. But what I have learned is really useful is to root myself in like what vision I have for where I'm going and what the values are that are driving said vision, and to use that to help make decisions and rein things in. So yes, I want to do 19 different projects. Which of those is best aligned with where I'm picturing myself a year from now? And if I do them all concurrently, I won't reach said vision. And so it's so hard to decide what to focus on and what not to. And I mean, I've had to lean on my support sources. I've had to lean on like my peers that also have practices or an ADHD coach or my own therapist to be like, okay, where do I like rein this in? Right. But I've also gotten really good at asking for that support and like using the people around me, which has been really useful. Because sometimes people can see the forest better than I can when I'm really zoned in on the tree. So yeah, I've been trying to root myself in like, okay, if I were to picture like what life would feel like for me at the end of this year, if I had a really great year, what would I feel like? And is this task I'm about to pick up actually going to get me closer to feeling that way or not? So for
Right.
me, I've had a lot of flux in my career in the last couple of years. I've got two young toddlers. Like everything is often chaotic.
Yeah.
So for me, when I'm picturing like my ideal life, it's got some like groundedness to it, which does not mean like repetitive stableness. It just means like I feel like the ground is steady versus I'm constantly like putting out a fire.
Yeah.
And so for me, like the priority is setting up systems for that so that I don't have to be continuously putting out fires. And that's something that I learned at my last practice too, is if you don't build, we were building the plane as we were flying it. Do not recommend. That's a very bad plan. So like come up with your picture, know what the plane looks like, put down the framework, and then start flying to your destination. And so that's kind of really been helpful in grounding myself and then knowing when to pull in. When do I pull in like an AI tool to help me break something down? When do I like brainstorm with my husband, who's an entrepreneur, around like what order of operations I need to follow? Who needs to look over like my numbers with me to make sure that I'm doing this in a way that's sustainable? So it's kind of the
100%.
combination of that vision
Yeah.
and then the people.
Vision and the people. That makes a lot of sense. And I think you learn that as you go, like who to rely on, who to ask for support. And I think what I'm hearing pre and post diagnosis, right, is like post diagnosis is more clarity about the things I do need to ask for help with, the things I do need a second set of eyes on, allowing
Mhm.
myself to do those things instead of saying like I have to do it all myself, or delegating or reaching out for support is like weakness, or it creates like this desire or this thought that I'm not a savvy or confident entrepreneur or business owner. And in reality, it's like, no, this makes things run so much more smoothly. I want to say one thing though. I
Yes.
am very much a build the plane as you fly it type of human. So when I coach people, they're always like, how did you create all of this stuff? And I'm like, I really can't coach you on the way I did it because it's not going to likely work for you. I really think what you're saying is much sturdier when we're talking about how to create any sort of infrastructure. Cause like having the foundation and then building into it. But one thing that I've learned for me with all the ideas that I have a Google folder and I have a Google
Mhm.
Doc, and it's just labeled like Patrick's ADHD idea dump.
Uh-huh.
And I have it in checkbox form because I love checkboxes, and I color
Yes.
code it. And every time a new idea grabs me and excites me, I put it in the folder, in the doc, and I revisit the previous ideas. And I say, like, do these need to be rearranged based on how they're making me feel energetically? Like, am I feeling really excited about them? Am I feeling like, are any of these things like necessities with a timeline, like that have to happen by a certain time? So just constantly reevaluating that. And
Mhm.
sometimes things that were really exciting to me 2 months ago or 3 months ago are no longer exciting to me whatsoever. And I'm like, why did I even want to do this? So it's really nice instead of feeling like I have to commit fully to the thing only to then like trudge through it and just be like, oh my God, this is like torture. So it's really help allow for some freedom and some permission to drop things that are no longer lighting me up.
Yeah, I have, it's funny that you say that. So I have a to-do app on my phone and I have a project on there called Someday Maybe. And I
Mhm.
have one under like my personal stuff and then one under my work stuff. So I do the same thing where I'll like plug the idea in there. And then periodically when I get bored, I'll open that folder and I'll be like, is there anything on here that I'd like to pick up now? And totally giving yourself permission to like reshuffle what you're going to do when, I think, is really important too. So I had a grand plan for, Q1 of this year. I was going to hire and like lean into growing my group practice. Um, and then I just got really excited about like the ADHD and entrepreneurship stuff and teaching people how to do like neurodiversity affirming adult assessments. And so I pivoted and I put hiring later in the year and I'm doing that stuff first because that's just where my energy was and what lit me up right now.
Right.
But at least I think 3 years ago, me would have tried to do it all at the same time. And at least like current me has learned that, okay, then hiring needs to move somewhere else if I'm going to focus on those other two first. So some of that comes, I think, with a little bit of age and wisdom.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. And it's like one of those things where I could probably still do the majority of my ideas simultaneously like I used to, but in reality, they won't get done really well. And
Right.
that is something I've learned. Like, I think the autistic side of me is very much like you have to be all in or you are not in at all. And doing 5 or 6 projects simultaneously and juggling them and having your executive functioning like really struggle to figure out the sequential pieces and moving order. I'm like, I'm waving the white flag. Like I can't do this to myself anymore. And it's
Mhm.
allowed for me to hire like VAs, admin assistants, social media people, web people, SE, like all the people. And I
Yes.
could not love delegation any more than I do right now because I'm just like, I'm a visionary and I can create and I can create and I can create. But implementation takes a massive hit when you are trying to do all of the things and your executive functioning is kind of just sitting there in the corner, like, dude, did you forget about me? Because I can't even like, go make breakfast right now.
Yeah, I think it was an episode in one of your podcasts back a little ways ago where the person was talking about being an ADHDer and how we're really good creators and really bad maintainers.
Yep.
And that like totally resonated with me. And so yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that I've done that like maybe is against the business books or whatever is like hiring some of that help earlier rather than later because like yes, that's digging into my income right now that maybe I don't have a ton of extra fluff around, but I'm not going to be able to move up to the next thing or like execute on the ideas I currently have if I'm also the one returning all the emails, if I'm also the one checking on all the voicemails, like all the stuff that I avoid and don't want to do and or am not good at.
Yep.
If I have to do all of it myself, then I'm never going to actually level up. I'm never going to do the next thing.
Right. And that's such a great point, right? Because in the reality, in the immediacy, it's very easy to look at the short term of delegation cost money. If I don't have a ton of profit, that's scary and understandably so. But if it's going to lead to growth, where I'm then able to focus on the things that are going to create more revenue and create more energy while being able to delegate the tasks that are just like bogging me down, it's really worth it in the long run. And if you can look at it in that perspective, and I use the analogy like, and I've said this many times on here that I absolutely despise mowing my lawn. I hate it. I always have. I'm just not a I'm not a hands-on doer type of person. I just am not, and I can admit that. But like I know if it takes me an hour or even 2 hours to mow my lawn and I'm dreading it and I'm miserable or I'm frustrated about it, what could I have done in those 2 hours? So like in the reality, if I hire someone to do that and it costs me $50 or $100, what can I do in 2 hours that might free up time, energy, make more money for my business or whatever? And I've really tried to always use that as a thought process when I'm making decisions.
Yeah, I think we forget to account too for the time we spend, like you just said, avoiding and like the wasted time in avoiding, especially, I mean, ADHDers, we have like now and not now as our time zones in our brain. And so if like something's on the horizon, nothing else is getting done.
Yeah.
And so it's not just the time the task takes, which I think is like how a lot of us think about it of like, well, it's just like I live in the city of Minneapolis. My yard is tiny. So it's just like a 20-minute task, but it's not because it's going to occupy 3 hours of my brain around how much I don't want to like go outside and how it's either way too hot or way too cold or whatever. So,
Yep.
um, yeah, no, I think it's really wise to think about like, yeah, where else could that time go? Where else could that energy go? Am I better served, using my energy towards this other thing that's going to actually have a way higher return on investment, basically.
Yeah. Totally. Absolutely. I need that like Goldilocks temperature really because if I go outside and it's 1 degree above 69 degrees or anything like that, I'm going to struggle and my interoception is going to take a major hit. And then I'm going to get overheated. And I'm going to get really overwhelmed and I'll probably shut down. And, we just oftentimes don't think about the other factors besides like what's right in front of us. So I think it's really important, like you just said, to step back and just look at it like, okay, if I'm looking at it as like, there's here and now time of like this is what's in front of me and this is what's in the distance and I can't do anything in between. That takes a massive toll on your mental energy and your psyche. And just like I know for me, I'm just sitting on my couch then and just like binge watching a show that I've already watched.
Mhm.
Okay, I have this appointment at 4. And it's like, yeah, but it's 10 in the morning. But I'm like, yeah, but I have an appointment at 4. So I can't do
Right.
anything until that happens.
Definitely. I think too, like I spend a lot of time, and I'm guessing a lot of us that are like late diagnosed feel this way, where I felt like I had to do all the things because I had to prove to myself that I could do all the things.
Yeah.
And so I would like, it became like a source of kind of like self-trust that you were talking about, of like, I have to be able to show that I can return the emails and make the phone calls and write the website copy and like do this, that I can build this. I promise I've got the skills.
Yep.
And the thing is like, yeah, I can do those things. I'm perfectly capable of returning phone calls and sending emails and updating website copy. And I have for a good chunk of time. And like, is that actually worthwhile? Like, at what expense am I doing that?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think like a big like saving grace for us like ADHD entrepreneurs is like giving ourselves permission to not have to do all the things and still trust that we're capable of doing all the things.
Yeah, I love that. That's really well said. And I think that's so true because we're trying to prove that either to ourselves because of messaging we've received or our own internalized ableism or any childhood wounding. Like,
Mhm.
and it's like it compiles and it compounds. And then living in capitalist society and the hellacious world that we are currently living in, it's like, oh, you have to do more. You have to prove your worth. You have to showcase like your talent. And how many of us are doing that at the great expense? Like we talked about our immune systems, our mental health, our physical health, like our relationships, etc. Only to the point where like, did doing all the things, did that create this vision that is often romanticized of like what this
Mhm.
was going to lead to? And oftentimes it's like, I wish I had the time back. I wish I had the meaningful connection
Mhm.
back opposed to the doing and the productivity and the achievement. So really focusing on what's important values wise. Um,
Yeah.
question for you. As an ADHDer, as someone who's an entrepreneur, can you ever go back to a work environment that's like 9 to 5? These are the expectations.
Hell no. It's
I'm just
not right.
asking this question. Are you
You said
hireable?
I am 0% hireable.
Yeah.
I could see myself like maybe joining in like part-time capacities in other places if it was like
Right.
exactly the right thing for me.
Yeah.
But part of it, so like at my last practice, I was like pretty high up in leadership. So I got to feel basically like I was my own boss. Um, and so I got that high from there, but somebody else was in charge of just enough and it all fell apart. And so for me, I was like, okay, well, I have trust issues for sure. And I know, and this is like confidence that I've gotten over time, I know what I'm doing and I know that I'm
Yeah.
good at it. And so I
That's good.
can't watch somebody else do it poorly. And I don't have
No,
the filter for myself anymore. So like be
no,
cool
no,
with that.
no.
So I like look at other practices. I look at other places where I could go work and I would just be a nightmare because I would be like, well,
Yep.
you're wrong. This is
Sure.
better.
Yep.
Or have you thought about blank?
Yep.
And so yeah, no, I need to make my own schedule. I need to be able to
Yeah.
work when I can work and not work when I don't want to or can't.
Totally.
Um yeah, no, I'd be a nightmare employee at this point, I think.
Yeah, I think I would too. I mean, I don't think, I know I would. And I even remember like sitting in community mental health, like leadership meetings with different executive from different entities in the community. And I would always just say like, raise my hand and be like, do we have a purpose here? Like, are we meeting just to meet? And I would just say these things. Did not know at the time that I was autistic. I'm sure a lot of people in that room were probably like, is Patrick autistic? But I would just blurt these things out because it was like so infuriating to me to be like,
Yes.
we have better things to do. Like, what are we doing? And people would always be like,
Yes.
we're meeting to fucking meet. Like, no,
Yeah, why? This could have been an email.
send me an email. Like, I don't need to do this anymore. But I've known for a very long time, I don't think I can ever go back to a place of employment. Maybe doing some consulting, maybe something else, but
Mhm.
like it would have to be very much autonomy driven. And there would never be parameters of like, you have to work these hours at these times and you have to go through these processes. No, no, thank you. And that's why, going back to your point, I do think a lot of entrepreneurs are ADHDers or are neurodivergent in general. But I do think
Mhm.
that the need for autonomy and freedom and, like you said, to make your own decisions, especially when you feel like decisions are not often well made. So it's one of those things, and I have absolutely and zero regrets. That's another question, actually. Any regrets?
No.
None.
The only piece that I wished was different logistically was I decided to start my practice and like lean hard into my own entrepreneurial stuff while in my first trimester of pregnancy with my second kid, which like
Right.
that do not recommend. really not a great idea to start your own business when you're pregnant and then on maternity leave. Um, but other than that, like, no, zero regrets. And I'm fortunate in that my dad's an entrepreneur, my husband's an entrepreneur. Like, it's been around me. So it was never this like scary, impossible idea.
Yeah.
But I did take time to grow in the confidence that I could do it. And then I knew what I was doing because I like went to enough places where I was like, why are we having this meeting, or what are we doing? Or this decision you're making is clearly impacting the whole team.
Sure.
Why are we making this choice driven by your ego? And so, I needed the time to be able to like build up in my like self-assuredness around all of that, but no, zero regrets.
Good. Well, I think this has been a good conversation. And for those of you who are listening who are entrepreneurial, especially if you're ADHDers, it sounds like getting connected with Pri is a really good idea, especially for the new coaching you're launching. So tell everyone a little bit about what you're doing.
Yeah, so I have a like coaching and consulting business called 𝗁𝗲𝗄 Coaching and Consulting. And through that, I'm working on launching a group coaching program for high achieving, late diagnosed ADHDers. So folks that have gotten pretty far in their careers, they know they want to do more, they're getting really stuck. So it'll have kind of like a semi-educational component, some group coaching, a lot of group support, and just kind of tackling all the ways that like business and career advice works great for neurotypical brains, not so well for ADHD brains, and kind of helping everybody find their own vision and values to like drive their process. So
love it.
Yeah,
when
you can find me.
Does that launch?
I'm hoping to launch in like somewhere in March. So early to late March is going to be the launch date for the first cohort of that. And my hope is to make that an open program ongoing as the year kind of progresses.
Very cool.
Yeah. And then I also have, one-on-one coaching and consulting as well. So you can find me on Instagram at 𝗁𝗲𝗄 Coach, ASHA Coach, or website's 𝗁𝗲-coaching.com.
Easy enough. And all of that information will be in the show notes. So you have easy access. So you can connect with Dr. Rao and you can join that coaching program, especially if you need this type of support. Really excited to meet you. Thanks for coming on. I'm going to see you in both Scotland and New Zealand, which is super fun.
Yes.
And maybe I can convince you and Jess to come to Greece. I'm not going to stop trying. So your husband might.
I would love to. Yeah. I was like, I don't know if I can ditch the 2 toddlers another week in there, but
life finds a way. But
yeah,
you're doing cool stuff in this field, and it's really cool just to watch your journey unfold. So thank you so much for coming on and making the time.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This is fun.
To everyone listening to All Things Private Practice, new episodes are out on Saturdays on all major platforms and YouTube. Like, download, subscribe, and share. Doubt yourself. Do it anyway. We'll see you next week.